Hello and welcome to episode 116 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On the show today, we welcome back my good friend, the Sarah Enigma. Last month, Sarah and I discussed rides and attractions at Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World that traditionally have short wait times, and we talked about whether we think those experiences are even worth those short wait times. We're going to pick up where we left off in that conversation. Before we get started, it's time to discuss a lot of big things happening right now at Walt Disney World. This episode is going live on April 20th, and that's the day Walt Disney World annual passes are going back on sale for all levels. Until now, WDW had frozen sales on all APs besides the weekday-only Pixie Dust Pass, which was only available to Florida residents. This is a big deal for out-of-state Disney fans and people who want a higher level pass. This Saturday is also the 25th anniversary of Disney's Animal Kingdom Park. I made sure to make my park pass reservation months ago so I could bring you any potential special offerings for the celebration. One of those offerings is the new Moana meet and greet at DAK. I will try to ride my favorite rides at the park and do some of the underrated things at Animal Kingdom as well. Make sure that you're following the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel to see the inevitable vlogs from the festivities. In recent weeks, I've brought you vlogs from the After Hours event at Disney's Hollywood Studios, Epcot's International Flower and Garden Festival, and our ball collection drive for the Boys and Girls Club of Central Florida. We raised $1,300 to purchase 146 balls. Thank you all so much. You should also follow me on social media on Twitter at Rick_ear, on Instagram at Rick Doherty TGTT, and on TikTok at Tall Guy Talks Travel. You can find the Sarah Enigma at the Sarah Enigma on Instagram. Now let's welcome the Sarah Enigma. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Yeah, I think because I didn't grow up with the parks, I grew up with the movies. This is a particularly favorite attraction of mine because it actually brings in the movies right into the park. So you get to see different scenes from the movies of your childhood. There's the Be Our Guest scene from Beauty and the Beast. And I specifically remember the scenes from Lion King as well, because I loved Lion King as a child. So to bring those scenes together in this whole show and add new things and see them in different ways. And of course it's in 3D, and you can also, there's some smell as well. It livens up the experience, and it makes you really feel like you are involved in a Disney movie. And where else can you do that without Disney magic than in Walt Disney World? Like, it's just in that way too, it's just so magical, and it just makes sense. And yeah, a lot of people maybe don't know exactly what it is, and they might say, oh, it's just Disney movies. And like I said, it is Disney scenes, but they're connected differently, and there's different animation, and it's just absolutely fabulous. So if you need to put your feet up, it truly is a great attraction.
I like to tell the story about how when I was still living in Arizona and Courtney and I came down for a vacation to spend the whole week, we had a fast pass. Yes, it was still fast pass time for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train that was going to start about 15 minutes after the parade ended. So we waited in Liberty Square for about an hour for the parade, and then we were going to head over to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train right away so that we would walk behind Columbia Harbor House and past Peter Pan's flight. That was how we were going to get to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train so we weren't cut off by the parade. We had the whole thing planned out perfectly, except for it was 2:00 in the afternoon. The sun was beating down on Courtney, and she just all of a sudden started feeling sick. She started feeling woozy. She didn't want to get on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train right away, even though it's not the most intense roller coaster. So what were we able to do? She was able to get in line for Mickey's PhilharMagic, get off her feet for 15, 20 minutes, and that little bit of time in the air conditioning just revitalized her. We were able to ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It was the first time she ever rode it. Absolutely loved it. This attraction can be a lifesaver in the middle of a busy park day.
Yeah, I totally agree. The air conditioning really, you don't always think about it, but it will save your butt. So it's a good attraction to go to.
It's a Small World is going to be a controversial opinion because I do think sometimes this can be 45 minutes. It can get higher. I would say, unless it is a must do for you on your vacation, don't wait 45 minutes for this attraction. It will drop later in the day. I love it because it is iconic. It goes back to the 64 World's Fair. My mother actually rode it as a kid in the 64 World's Fair when she was there. So she always has to ride this. Anytime we're in Magic Kingdom, she's just like, can we do Small World? When are we doing Small World? Let's do Small World. The song is an earworm, but it is iconic. It's such a cute attraction. I really love, and I think this is something that we should probably discuss. They recently added a doll who is in a wheelchair. And Sarah often talks about her dealing with chronic illness. She has a blog. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But the whole purpose of this attraction is inclusion. It's a small world. We're all sharing this one planet. And they did talk about lots of different races, nationalities, ethnicities. But now to start moving to somebody who is in a wheelchair. I can't imagine what a kid who is in a wheelchair seeing that, how much that would have to be inspiring to them.
I was absolutely thrilled when I saw the news that they were adding a child in a wheelchair, because you're totally right. This whole ride is about inclusion. So to start also bringing in not only differences in race and ethnicities, but differences in how we look bodily, like in a wheelchair, is absolutely fabulous. I think so that any kid riding the ride can see themselves and be like, hey, look, that's me. I think that is perfect. And there is something I totally agree about Small World. It's a Small World that is classic, and the song is an earworm, but it's iconic too. And it is a great ride. I like that you go in big boats, so you already feel in a community while you're going through It's a Small World. My only thing about It's a Small World is that for my family, we have someone in a wheelchair, so we have to go in the wheelchair entrance. And I would say that for this, I would wait less time because it's quite a steep hill they put you on. So to have to actually hold the wheelchair without letting your family member fly down the ramp is a little bit taxing. So I think if I didn't have a wheelchair in my party, I would definitely wait up to half an hour for it. But since I do have a wheelchair, just the physical strength it takes to hold that ramp, it would be probably less than 15 minutes for my family.
And that makes sense why I haven't heard your sister complain about this ride before, because the one complaint I have about it is my legs are basically up to my ears when I try to ride this because of how uncomfortable the benches are in the regular boats. So your sister's riding one of the accessible boats, and that explains why she at 5'11" or 6 feet tall or however tall she isn't complaining about this ride, because I am hurting. I am in pain when I get off this ride. It's a Small World and Space Mountain are the two rides that put me in the most pain at Magic Kingdom. So that is a little funny there. I definitely think if you're over 6 feet tall, be prepared to have to wiggle yourself into weird contorted positions because you can't just sit straight with your feet in front of you. It is too uncomfortable. Moving on to Liberty Square, this is an attraction that obviously Sarah, as a Canadian, is going to skip because she has no interest in the Hall of Presidents. But I am a history nerd. Like, I've talked about this before. I was a history major in college. I am fascinated by U.S. history, and I do love this attraction. It has 45 animatronics, which is just a crazy amount of animatronics, honestly. There was a time, fairly recently, where people took to showing their emotions or their opinions while watching this show. It was something that really turned me off from doing this attraction. I finally started doing it again, and I found that people have kind of calmed down in that respect. It should be about celebrating what the presidency represents and not any individual president, because the whole point of the show is that the president is this unifying figure that when there is a tragedy, when there is some national hardship, tries to unite people. Well, if we're cheering and booing depending on our favorite team, it's the complete opposite point of the attraction. Absolutely every one of the men up there, and hopefully at some point women who will be in there in the future, had extreme flaws. It shouldn't be about reverence towards the people. It should be the goal of that institution as the head of state, as the person who speaks when 9/11 happens, or the Challenger, or whatever major event. That's the purpose of the show, and I just hated that it turned political there for a while, but I do think people are starting to calm down a little bit from that. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be coming down from another country and be like, what is going on with these people?
The Canadians, I think some of us would definitely go for it, especially if you watched like the musical Hamilton on Disney Plus, because maybe you'd want to learn more about the original presidents. But you're totally right. I'm sorry, Americans, but it doesn't sound that too interesting to me. So don't hate me.
Trust me, Sarah, there's never a wait for this thing. There aren't a lot of Americans who are super interested in it either. I just happen to be one of them because of my love for history. We're going to move to another show now in Frontierland, and this one is cute. It's funny. It's actually, by Disney standards, a little naughty. You get some blue humor in there, and that is Country Bear Jamboree. I know this isn't a must for you every time you go, but it is an attraction that you have experienced, and I do think, almost like Hall of Presidents, is a uniquely American experience, so I don't even know if you get some of the jokes about it, but what do you think about Country Bear Jamboree?
I think from an Imagineer standpoint, like which would be cool about the Hall of Presidents as well, is that the animatronics are very interesting, and I always like seeing new things, and I'm not a type of person that likes to see behind the magic, but for me it just is magic, so it's like, whoa. I do remember enjoying the first part of it, and then I remember very specifically the first time I watched this, the heads started singing on the walls. And I remember my jaw dropping as a child and being like, what is this? So I think you're probably right. I think some of the jokes probably still pass over my head, but it is cute. And like the dancing bears are cute. And I think it's fun because it really fits the theme of Frontierland. And then when you sometimes see the country bears dancing in Frontierland, you're like, oh yeah, that's who they are, instead of being like, what the what? Right? So it's nice to be able to enjoy that experience. But like you said, it's not like my favorite.
In the movies, one of the things that Disney does so well, they do it with Pixar, but they do it with the original Disney movies as well, is they will give these little winks and nods to the parents who are watching. And I remember seeing Country Bear Jamboree when I was a kid and just thinking, oh, it's dancing bears and they're funny and they're Southerners. They're kind of like the Dukes of Hazzard. It's, because that was a show that was on when I was a kid. And then going back and seeing it as an adult and hearing songs like All the Guys Who Turn Me On, Turn Me Down. And then I am laughing so hard because it's not a dirty joke, but for Disney, it's a little bit of a dirty joke. And that is so funny to me that I was sitting there watching it. I just think of my parents sitting next to me as a 5-year-old and trying not to crack up with some of those songs, Blood on the Saddle. Like, It's a cute show. It's fun. You never have to wait through one full showing. You're always going to get into the next showing of Country Bear Jamboree. And it's another one of those ways to just get off your feet for a little bit. It would be the perfect thing to do right after the parade, because the parade comes right through Frontierland. You've waited for a while, the sun's beating on you, and then you watch it and then just head in. I think the show's like 14 to 18 minutes. Just get a little bit of AC, come out. Now the Frontierland crowds have cleared from the parade, and you're ready to go on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And then everybody's happy. So now we're going to move on to Adventureland, and this is going to be the second controversial opinion from the Sarah Enigma during this conversation. And we're going to talk about Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. Now, I assume, as a Disney fan, Sarah, you must love this attraction.
Well, I am ashamed to admit, but I really dislike this attraction.
All right, so we're going to be fair. What don't you like about this, Sarah?
Well, I kind of have to explain like what happened. Like the first time we went to Disney World recently, we didn't really know about this attraction, so we didn't go to it. And then after that ride, I got way more into following people on Instagram and way more into like doing Disney online stuff. And I was like, hey, there's this like attraction that is very Disney history, and everyone's saying it's this epic attraction to do. And I was like, okay, we have to do it. So my family's like, really? And I'm like, yes, really, we have to do this attraction. So you stand in line and they start with the birds, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I got this. And then we get in there and we get seated, and we're sitting, and then the whole room erupts in singing, and all these little birds are just opening their mouths, and I just was horrified because I knew my family was sitting beside me and going, what is this? So for me, it's more of a feeling, because I was just, I was like, what have I put them through? How long is this? Oh my goodness, now the flowers are singing. And then I was just, I was dying, because I was like, I am going to be ridiculed for this for the rest of my life, for making them sit through this. And yeah, it's just the feeling I have. And I don't know, maybe it's just not our type of classic.
Coming at it as somebody who has been going to the parks since he was 5 years old, and these things are so ingrained into my family's DNA. Like, these attractions are some of the best times I had through my childhood. So it doesn't make any sense to me how you could not like the Enchanted Tiki Room, but I also didn't start experiencing it as an adult. I experienced it first as a kid, so I carry all of that nostalgia with me. I love some of the punny jokes in this attraction. I love some of the music. I like, obviously the Tiki 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 Room, like that one is such an earworm, but some of the other songs are good too. Some of them are I understand how you could maybe not enjoy some of them, but I just can't picture Walt Disney World without the Enchanted Tiki Room in Adventureland in Magic Kingdom. So I respect your opinion. It's just wrong.
And coming from it as what you said, like as I can totally see it as a classic nostalgic ride. And as I was sitting there in horror, I could still see the history of it, and that it was the first animatronic ride that Walt Disney had. And I just think for us, mostly, like I love Jungle Cruise, but it's a very different type of humor. And I think that's probably why, is that as an adult, you have your own sense of humor, and the Enchanted Tiki Room is not that. But I totally respect your opinion. And because you were a child in nostalgia,
I think we're going to find some common ground. Right across from the Enchanted Tiki Room is Magic Carpets of Aladdin. And I have nothing against this ride except for the location makes it a nightmare to get through Adventureland. When it comes to riding the ride, I'll do it every once in a while. I like it. I really love doing it during the Halloween party because they put projections onto Pirates of the Caribbean. So you can kind of get up there and see Cinderella Castle and then see the projections on Pirates of the Caribbean, and you get to look at Adventureland. The problem that I have with this ride is it just clogs up and creates all of these bottlenecks in a very, very busy, crowded part of the park.
I totally agree. And what you've been talking about with the amazing insight of the Imagineers for Dumbo and then Aladdin, they just put it in the middle, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, I agree with you. It's a fun ride. Like, again, like I said, who doesn't love flying, and seeing the castle is amazing, but it just creates so many crowds. And it's like, if you just had moved it.
And then the camel spits on you every once in a while. And
I know. And no one likes getting wet when they don't think they're getting wet.
one more little attraction that I'm going to bring up in Adventureland. Right now, it is listed as a 5-minute wait, and this is the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. Now, obviously, Sarah has said that her family has a wheelchair in the party when they are going to Walt Disney World, so obviously she has never done this attraction. You are not missing much, Sarah. It is very, very outdated at this point. It almost feels like it should be the cue for a much better ride, for a much better experience, because you're basically just walking through a line, except for you're going up steps, you're going down steps. By the end of this, your knees hurt. It's such a small footprint. It takes up such a little amount of Magic Kingdom that I doubt it's ever going away, because what would they put there? But just be aware that this is going to bore kids in your family. Yes, you do get some cool views of Cinderella Castle. You might want to go up there if you're a photographer, or if you just really love old school Disney movies. But 95% of Disney guests can skip this with absolutely no problems. Before we wrap things up today, there are 2 attractions in Frontierland, or at least 2 experiences in Frontierland that I want to address. I guess one of them's technically in Liberty Square, but that is the Liberty Belle, which is the steamboat that goes around the rivers of America. I totally understand, Sarah, why your family skips this, because it takes a long time. It takes about a half hour to make a trip around the rivers of America after you've loaded, and then it starts and you go along. And when you're on a vacation, a half hour is a lot of time to give up to just ride a steamboat. However, it is an attraction that I do like to do every once in a while because it is relaxing. You get some of those good views. We've already talked about Walt Disney and his love of transportation, so I feel having these river boats in there is really cool. I'm from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which was where they created the steamboat. So there's that tie-in for it as well. But on the other side of the rivers of America, from the main part of the park, is Tom Sawyer Island. And much like the Liberty Belle, I understand why your family didn't do this, because you have to take a raft over there, and then you have to explore it, and then take a raft back. And if you have a limited amount of time in Magic Kingdom, it takes a good hour, hour and a half to really experience Tom Sawyer Island. This is definitely something that exists. If you have kids who just need to run around for a little bit, I understand why that would be important. Or if you're like me and you get to go so often that you can take this time. But I do think that this is an underrated attraction because so few people actually take the time to do it. And it is fun. There's some caverns. It's a way to feel like you're in the middle of nowhere while you're still in this incredibly busy theme park. If you're staying at the Grand Floridian or the Contemporary or the Poly, you can take that midday break easily. If you're staying at some of the other resorts, maybe you can take that midday break. But if you're staying at the All-Stars, or if you're staying off property sometimes you need to find your midday breaks in the theme park. And I think Tom Sawyer Island is a great underappreciated way to do that. Anyway, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I had so much fun. Thank you.
Before we let you go, I want to give you the chance to talk about your blog and your Instagram page at The Sarah Enigma. When we've had you on the show before, we've talked a lot about dealing with chronic illness while going to the parks. I want to have you on the show more to just talk about Disney without having to make everything about chronic illness. But you do love to raise awareness of this topic. So why don't you talk about your blog and your Instagram page?
Yeah, thanks. I really do love bringing awareness to chronic illness, and to specifically for people who maybe have never interacted with someone with chronic illness, or if they have someone in their life that they just want to learn better. So my Instagram, it does have a lot of Disney, and it's at The Sarah Enigma, but it also promotes my blog, which my blog specifically talks about the different experiences you have as someone with chronic illness. It's from everything from how it's different to fall asleep because you physically have to have different accommodations, or what to say to someone with chronic illness and definitely what not to say to someone with chronic illness. Or a popular one is talking about spoons as your form of energy and telling people about that. And so that's mostly what my blog focuses on, is to bring awareness to chronic illness. And I love that I've met Rick through this podcast, because you are also so inclusive, and that's what I'm trying to bring, is more inclusiveness in the world. So that's my blog, and you can find my blog through my Instagram if you go through my link tree.
I just got permission to start talking about this earlier this week, and my wife Courtney, who you've heard on the show, many of you in the past, and you hear me talk about her quite frequently because obviously she's my wife, she also suffers from chronic illness. So now, two of my absolute favorite people in the world are dealing with chronic illness. And not only am I so happy to have Sarah as a friend because she is a great friend, but she has also, I think, helped make me a better husband to a wife with chronic illness. And she has made me aware of so many different things by reading her blog. I really would love if everybody would just take the time at The Sarah Enigma on Instagram, find her link tree, read her blog. She is an incredible writer, and she is doing such amazing work to raise awareness and not just be positive all the time, to actually tell you what it's like to deal with this. Sarah, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Rick.
Next week, our other awesome Sarah will be back on the podcast. Sarah Says and I are going to continue our conversation about Epcot's World Showcase. Here's a short clip of what you can expect.
I'm probably in the minority, but I love the Germany Pavilion. I mean, there's not a ridiculous ton of amount of things to do there, kind of like the cool Japan Pavilion, but I love the Germany Pavilion. I love the restaurant at the Germany Pavilion. I love the shop at the Pavilion, and I love just hanging out, and it's in the little town square area, and yeah, I love it. And they have beer. They have so much beer, and it's amazing.
So yes, if you like beer, you're probably going to like the Germany Pavilion. And I will agree that Biergarten is a very good restaurant. It's fun. They have the band perform. It's all you care to enjoy, which is awesome. You can just sit in the air conditioning almost halfway through World Showcase and just eat so much that you have to buy a new pair of pants because the ones that you wore in don't fit anymore. And the food at Biergarten's good as well. Even as a vegetarian, like, I can find enough that I eat to the point of gluttony when I am at Biergarten.
It's so good. Well, and the thing is, I don't know if it's still this way since they reopened from the pandemic, but it used to be you sat in true like Oktoberfest style where you sat with a bunch of people you don't know. And they're on these long like picnic table type tables. I mean, yes, you're in your own chairs. I don't, at least from every time I've been there, but it's cool because you are potentially, if your party isn't that big, you're seated with people you've never met before. And we've met some really amazing people when we've gone, and families, and the wait staff there is always amazing. And the band, as you said, the show is great. And they encourage people to come down and dance, which you don't really see in many other places in the parks. When there is some kind of entertainment during, like a show during your meal. So yeah, it's always a great experience in my opinion.
That will be a part of episode 117 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.